All right, so the cases have gone up in Ontario and Quebec, and there's calls for lockdowns. I believe they have increased lockdowns. Apparently, Ontario's coming up with a plan to increase restrictions in mainly just the Toronto area, but nonetheless, this is probably what's going to be happening going forward. In Alberta, we did have a very high day yesterday as far as cases go, but again, still not any crazy by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, you have already a lot of people panicking, but as I've been saying for a long time, there's no reason to panic, and this is just coming based off, largely off just paranoia, right? And here's why I'm talking about this and why it's so important is that they will never, um, they'll never admit they're wrong when it comes to this kind of stuff. And the problem too is that they've doubled down on this being doomsday so many times that they're not going to go back on their word, because if they go back on their word, they look stupid. And that's the problem when it comes to government. One of the many problems when it comes to government is that they're more worried about appearing good than actually doing good. They'd rather not admit they're wrong and double down on the lie than admit that they were wrong, because that makes them look weak politically. So again, that's what's happening. It's looking like Ontario and Quebec are going to increase restrictions. You have the Ontario Liberal leader here calling for bars, restaurants, and gyms to close. Again, um, these people don't have your best interest at heart. Like they just flat out don't. The clear and obvious solution has been clear and obvious for a long time now. It's let the vast majority of people go about their normal lives with little to no restrictions and shield the people that are at risk. That's been the clear answer for since like May, literally. And yet we're still going about this stupid lockdown stuff, right? Like, back in June and July and August, it was, oh, the mask mandates are going to save us. We need the mask mandates. And then we put those in, and sure enough, the cases are going up again. So again, they're never going to admit they're wrong. This is the one thing that I really need to get across. Now, I don't think the majority of people believe in this garbage. The problem is so many people are silent on the topic, and the people that are the most paranoid are the ones that are making their voice heard the loudest, right? Like those are the people that are, you know, confronting you in public and doing all the crazy Karen stuff. Um, those are the problem people, right? Those are the people that watch CBC and believe everything they say, right? If CBC told them doomsday's tomorrow unless we don't lock down, they would believe it, right? So again, that's where most people are at. Um, the next thing to bring up is from Global News here, and they say Italy on Wednesday made it mandatory to make masks outdoors mandatory. Obviously, do you think Canada should do the same? And again, um, 67.6 say no, 27.3 say yes. And again, this is the thing. Like there's no evidence that there's no evidence that masks do anything, regardless of where you are. The only way that they would make a difference is if you're sick and if you're symptomatic, right? You had um, every prominent doctor go and expert going into this whole situation, and up until late May, early June, going back decades, would have told you. And there's clips of Fauci saying, there's clips of Tam saying, there's clips of many other doctors saying masks don't work if you're not sick, and not only that, that asymptomatic carriers is not what drives viruses. Dr. Fauci is quoted in saying that. He was very vehemently, on that point. But again, all of a sudden, everyone changes their minds, and they provide no evidence to do it. They simply provide some correlation and they assume it's a causation, right? Even though there's plenty of evidence to the contrary, right? They say, oh, Japan had face masks and they were doing. I don't even know if it was mandatory there. I just think most people wear them, and they did pretty good. But Sweden didn't do it, and they're doing good now. South Dakota didn't do it. They were doing really good the whole time. Again, so there's plenty of evidence to contradict this, and this just goes to show, I believe, that 27.3% of the population will believe whatever the government tells them. They will literally believe whatever the government tells them. And that's a pretty scary precedent. Now, again, this is outdoors, right? So, again, like everybody knows that outdoors it's not as likely to spread as indoors. So, my guess is that if it was an indoor thing, probably roughly half, maybe a little less than half of people would support it. So, again, there's a very good percent of the population that has their head so deep in the sand that I don't think there's any going back when it comes to this kind of stuff. So anyway, this was going around a few days ago, roughly. Jagmeet Singh. I mean, this is something he put out in 2016 actually, but it was going around again. I mean, he basically put out a tweet praising Castro and how great of a guy he was. Now again, um, there's many things to bring up when it comes to this, but where are we at in a society to where if Trump doesn't condemn an organization that isn't by definition racist, they probably do have some racist members, but many of their leaders have condemned racism. So the idea that Trump has to condemn a group that isn't even bad or isn't even racist, but Jagmeet Singh can praise a communist dictator and nobody cares, it's just insanity. And this is where we're at these days, that we've gone so down the rabbit hole that we think that praising a leader of an ideology that killed over 100 million people is perfectly fine, right? Like that's just perfect. And this is the thing too, like he's gotten massive backlash from this, but does he delete the tweet? No, he doesn't delete it. So again, like these people are proud of this kind of stuff. Like they're proud of it. And it's just pure insanity. Like it's pure insanity. Like these are the same people that think that if you even have a conversation with someone who has an out there belief, then that means that you're endorsing said belief. But if you literally endorse a terrible belief and you're on the left, well, then it doesn't matter, right? And it doesn't matter. And this is the thing, too, that when it comes to the left, their political worldview is largely driven by emotion. It's not really driven by reality in any way, shape, or form. And that this is why they consider this kind of stuff okay, because if you think about communism from a logical, rational, objective truth point of view, you realize that, hey, um, it doesn't matter if you have good intentions. It's still led to the deaths of 100 million people in the 20th century. But again, if you think about it from an emotional leftist perspective, it's communism helps the poor, right? Like Bernie Sanders talking about bread lines being a good thing. Like he praised Castro, I believe, too, not to the extent that Jagmeet Singh did, but again. And here's the thing too, these are the same people that like to think that the NDP and the Liberals in Canada are center left, right? Like they're center left. Why are you praising a communist if you're center left? Like it's just pure insanity. And this is the thing too, like the mental gymnastics that some of these people do is absolutely off the charts. Like it really astounds me, the like I say, the mental gymnastics that some of these people have to pull off to justify their worldviews. Like it's very 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 crazy. And the last thing I wanted to bring up is this graph showing. I mean, long story short, Canada takes way more refugees than we should be. Um, this is from Leonard Rocks, and he says, "Are they really refugees? Some rental house, 1,600 a month, government supported Syrian refugees have now left to spend the cold months in the Middle East while still maintaining their empty rental property here. Are they really refugees, or are they just here on taxpayer paid vacation?" Now again, the left always talks about the rich have to pay their fair share, right? But when it comes to refugees, we take way more than our fair share. Again, when it comes to immigration, like I know I brought it up tons of times before, but for anyone who doesn't know or understand, immigration exists these days to basically provide cheap labor and to provide the left votes, right? The right, like I mean, both sides like the cheap labor. The left really likes immigration, and why they're the ones that are always wanting the most immigration, because it's votes for them. Immigrants from the third world overwhelmingly vote for the left, right? I think the numbers are like 75%. It's not even close. So that's the thing. Like, that's the thing, that they want immigration because they want the votes. They can't convince the existing population to go along with their political ideologies, so they just import people that will, right? And this is the thing too, that they bring these people in, they get them hooked on government assistance, and they're pretty much a vote for life, right? They're a vote for life. So it's incredibly smart from a political aspect, but you're screwing over the existing population. And why anybody is for mass immigration seriously is beyond me. And here's the caveats I always throw out too, is that I would be fine with immigration under a couple main caveats. Number one being unemployment is very low. And number two, they're not going to be net drains in society. And this is the other argument the left always brings up that they're wrong about, and they'll admit it to you when they're right in their argument, in that they'll always say, oh, they're immigrants from the third world aren't net drains in society. They pay just as much as everyone else. But yet, if you bring up a policy to say, hey, okay, if you actually believe that, you'd be fine with a policy that says we can't be bringing in immigrants if they're going to be living off the taxpayer's dime, and they'll be vehemently opposed to that policy, right? So the contradictory opinions and worldviews of the left really knows no bounds when it comes to these things. So, yeah, this is where we're at. That we have a massive unemployment right now. We have massive deficits. We have a incredibly weak economy, and anybody thinking we're going to be coming out of this unscathed is rather insane, considering even before the whole pandemic, we were already bordering on recession. Like, we were very close to recession. We're going to be recovering out of this situation into a recession, and the Trudeau government's solution to that is to, mass immigration, which is only going to drive down, or at the very least, it's not going to help increase wages. It's going to make a already too competitive job market even more competitive, which is, like I say, all it's going to do is drive down wages. If you're an employer, the more people you have to choose from, the less you're going to be able to pay for said job. If there's only two people available, then they're going to be it's a workers market, right? But now we're in a employers market. Now, why is that? Because the government has flooded us with low skilled immigration, right? And here's the other thing too, that even if a lot of these people, they're an advocate, oh, we want the high skilled people, right? Like, we want the people with the degrees and whatnot. Well, here's the other problem with that too, is that um, do you not consider that a little selfish, that you're going to take the most intelligent people from these third world countries and bring them to the West so we can I mean, in a way, it's exploitation, right? Like, the left loves to rail about the West exploiting the third world, but yet they're perfectly fine with the West taking massive amounts of the most intelligent people from the third world and using it to our advantage, rather than letting them stay in their home countries and them, starting businesses and, building their own countries up, right? So anyway, yeah, like I say, this is really. And here's the thing, like, over this whole pandemic thing, immigration slowed to a halt, but there's already talks of the liberals wanting to ramp it back up again, right? Like, you know, it's just I think they're gonna do it at some point. I think it's kind of hard to pull off right now with the whole pandemic thing. But they're going to do it. And not to mention, too, my guess is that they'll increase the total. They'll be like, oh, well, we haven't had any, hardly any immigration for the last 6 months to a year. That means we have to increase it by 10-20% to make up for the difference, right? Even though, if anything, you should be decreasing it, but or at the very least keeping it at next to nothing for a while. But nonetheless, that's probably what they're going to do. Like, that's probably what they're going to do. So anyway, if you like the video, make sure you hit that like and subscribe. Make sure you follow me on Twitter, especially, but also BitChute and Parler. All those links are in the description, so you can find them all there.